taking notes from nobody.
Your superstars have off games.
Follow us on social media at Celtics Talk Weekly.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Celtics Talk Weekly. It has been a minute now. It's kind of foreign for me to say that, but we're finally back into the swing of things, 2022. We are super excited to talk all things Celtics with you guys. I'm here with my two co-hosts, Ian Angelo and Justin Lowe, on right below me, and we have a very special guest on the show tonight. Super excited to have him. If you know the Celtics, if you're on TikTok, if you're on really any platform, you know this guy, JJ. Jacob, thanks for coming on to the show. We're super excited to have you.
How's it going? I'm happy to be here.
So obviously, guys, you know, we got a lot to talk about. One, we almost haven't filmed a podcast in almost 2 months. The Celtics kind of struggling. Things have been going rough. But before we jump into that, I just want to give a quick little shout out to our sponsor of the podcast, Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout is a kind of a podcast directory where you can record and post all of your podcasts to all the major podcast directories such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and many, many more. We use it and love it. They're great at Buzzsprout, and we recommend you guys use it. If you use our link in our bio, your second paid invoice, you get $25 free to Amazon. So we go recommend if you want to talk about any really topic, use Buzzsprout. You want to make a podcast, it's a great spot. That takes us into the weekly recap, guys. The Celtics actually kind of had a solid week. Kind of first time saying that, and it feels like forever. The Celtics played 4 games this week, starting with that win in Indiana. They're at home, actually, in overtime. 101-98. Brown was the leading scorer with 26. He also tagged along 15 rebounds, 6 assists, kind of an all-around game there for Brown. And then the Celtics traveled to Indiana in a little mini-series, and they beat them. They kind of smacked them down on their home court. Brown, yet again, kind of been a common trend here, leading scorer with 34. Another big game. Celtics head out on the road to Philadelphia, kind of put out a really poor performance, to say the least, 111-99. Lost there. Brown, once again, leading scorer, 21. But Celtics traveled back home to face off against kind of a banged-up Chicago team. But they took care of business in a close one down the stretch, 114-112. Tatum led all scorers with 23. Justin, take us to the week ahead, my guy.
So the week ahead, all home games for the Boston Celtics. Excuse me. Monday, tomorrow. By the time you guys probably hearing this podcast, Celtics are already play the game, guys, because they play at 12:30 in the afternoon. MLK Day tip-off gets the New Orleans Pelicans. Jesus Christ. Without Zion Williamson, right? And then Charlotte on Wednesday, and then closing out the week on Friday against Portland, who will not have Damian Lillard. So that should be a game the Celtics should take. No Damian Lillard, you got to go in there. No Zion Williamson, you got to go in there. Take advantage of these. Last night, like you said, no Levine. Celtics went in there and took advantage. You're going to have to do it again this week. Those are your 3 games at the week ahead. All home games for the Celtics, so going to capitalize on that as well.
All right, so in what's trending, like we said earlier, the Boston Celtics actually beat the Chicago Bulls 114-112. It was a pretty solid game all around. In other NBA news, Kevin Durant is going to be out 4 to 6 weeks because he was diagnosed with a MCL sprain. And non-NBA news, the Patriots got smacked by the Buffalo Bills, which was kind of depressing.
Rough game. Hate to see that. But I know, obviously we're not Patriot guys, but solid season all around. They really were supposed to be in that situation in the playoffs. So, would have liked to see them better. But, shout out the Pats because they had one hell of a run. But guys, let's jump right into it. So, obviously, like I said, it's kind of been a minute since we've recorded a podcast. It kind of felt like in our last podcast, we had all this optimism. We kind of really had these high hopes for the Celtics, as, every Celtics fan does at one point of their life. Things kind of seemed like they could be trending up, right? Brad made some great roster moves and whatnot. Fast forward to the new year, Celtics currently sit at 11th in the Eastern Conference, 22-22. It's been a rough go about it, and I mean, it really has been not the ideal season for the Boston Celtics fans. But JJ, a question I have really to start us off is, if you could pinpoint one thing for the Celtics this season that's kind of been the major problem, what would you kind of say, or what would you point at?
Well, the pinpointed problem that I'd say is how the fact that we go into ISO play like every single play down the stretch in the fourth quarter. We can come into the fourth quarter with a 5-10 point lead. It doesn't matter because the other team is moving the ball well, and on offense, either whether it's Jason Tatum, whether it's Jaylen Brown, Josh Richardson, of ISO play and not enough ball movement, which can look every once in a while with a sidestep, or there can be a play that just drops the jaw of every Celtics fan. At the end of the day, ball movement and movement without the ball would be way more useful. There has been games where we do move the ball in the fourth, and in those games we win.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you guys saw that, but Embiid after the Celtics-Sixers game was saying how, you play the Celtics and it's kind of super easy to guard them. No one's really moving. You don't really have shooters around the court. It's kind of like you kind of stand there and you go one-on-one with your man every possession, and four guys on defense kind of get a breather because they're just kind of standing and watching,
Yeah, I don't think there's any disrespect with that. Like some people are, oh, it's Joel Embiid, that's disrespectful. It's just disrespect that. No, he's not. I mean, if you legitimately sit down and watch the Celtics, Joel Embiid is exactly right. Like it takes an opponent to say that, and for us to believe it, I don't think so. I mean, this has been all season long, and even last season, right? Where, like JJ said, there'd be games where we have a comfortable lead and we lose it because everybody, I don't know if it's an ego thing, but everybody plays ISO basketball, and ISO basketball is one of the easiest, if not the easiest, play to read. Everybody drops to the post, drops to the corners, yells ISO, and goes one-on-one, and that's not going to work, especially down the stretch when you're blowing in the middle of blowing a lead as well. That doesn't help.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's also times that I've seen where the Celtics, they just have lapses in the middle of the game where they're just not engaged. There'll be times where, they're passing, they're doing everything, they're all focused on one common goal, and then sometime in the middle of the third quarter, there will just be a lull in the game where everyone is just like, almost it feels like they're all comatose. Like they're just there, but they're walking around doing nothing, it feels like. So they lose focus sometimes when they're playing.
So would you blame these fourth quarter lapses on the Celtics players itself, or would you point the finger at Ime Udoka for not really setting up a proper scheme or game plan to get these guys, properly going in the fourth quarter?
That's a good question. I don't really know who you can blame. I would say Brad Stevens, but I mean, I don't really know if we can blame Brad Stevens for last season because this kind of problem was apparent last season too.
So you don't think Brad the core group of guys got into bad habits due to Brad Stevens last year? You're saying that's a good point, actually. I'm not 100% off that topic right there.
It's not 100% Brad's fault. There's obviously blame to put on the players themselves because they're also not focused. But I mean, at the same time, you have to admit there's some bad habits that kind of feel apparent over time, and I'm not saying that's 100% Brad Stevens' fault at all. It feels like kind of coming from that, and then Ime Udoka not really. I mean, I'm not saying he's not doing a good job because I mean he's been okay, I guess, for a coach, but. I don't know. It just feels like that kind of feels like it should be in the head coach's responsibility a little bit to kind of keep them focused, in my opinion.
Can I say one thing really quick? Can I take the stage a little bit? I've practiced this, by the way.
Okay, hit me with it.
Listen, and for all you Celtics fans out there that hate Coach Udoka, listen, things aren't meant to work with a snap of a finger. We get it. He hasn't gotten out to a great start. His rotations can be questionable. But look, you don't fire a rookie head coach 42 games into the regular season. That's not what you do, right? I mean, we didn't give up on Tatum and Brown. We didn't give up on Brad Stevens after he went 25 and 57. I mean, granted, the team that Udoka has is way better than the team Brad Stevens had in his first year. But you just don't give up on a coach like that. You don't fire the coach just because things aren't going the way you might want it to go in the first 42 games, right? Coach Udoka, like say the Celtics fix things in the offseason, right? Seamus has talked about in the postgame show how this season was meant to just kind of be a blow-by year and set us up financially into the offseason, which he might be right. I believe that as well. What if we come out next year and all of a sudden we're ECF bound or we're finals bound and all of a sudden we're going to start giving Udoka credit? right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we're patient with Udoka and we love Udoka.
That's Boston sports for you, though.
That is
Boston
sports.
And
Boston
that's
sports.
and that's what I'm not a fan of, though. You give Coach Udoka time. I completely agree with when people say I don't like this rotation. I thought it was questionable. The Celtics in that Philly game had cut it down to 13 in the fourth quarter. If you didn't watch the game, that was the smallest deficit of that game, other than when he threw the bench in. But he pulled the plug with 10 minutes to go. I don't know if that was Rob. You mentioned maybe maybe to see what players we could be traded. Yeah. We also mentioned Ian. I know you mentioned that first unit wasn't playing good, so maybe mix things up and try to see what could happen. I mean that unit did cut it down to 9, but there was only a minute left. But I agree as far as Udoka does have some questionable rotations, and Rob, I also agree. Is there some Coach Udoka to blame with these fourth quarter lapses down the stretch? But at the end of the day, we shouldn't fire Coach Udoka because he's only 42 games into the regular season of his rookie year. You don't fire a coach 42 games into his coaching career because it isn't going to plan, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Unless you're a bad team.
Yeah, well, and you could argue the Celtics, they're a pretty bad team, but I feel like with that comes a yearly trend with the Celtics as the trade line kind of buzzing drama. I feel like every single year, whether it's Jeremy Grant, whether it's who is it, Evan Fournier, I want to say it always used to be Paul George back in like 2016, 17.
Oh, yeah,
Andre Drummond drama. So there's always the reoccurring, theme for the Celtics. But, obviously, JJ, you look at Boston and you look at their roster. Coming into the year, you kind of thought it was pretty, solid and sound. But 44 games in, actually, you're going to think differently. So what's some moves here that or players you'd like to see Stevens target this deadline to, kind of help the Celtics out?
Yeah, good question. And obviously you have the Kings. They want to get rid of a lot of guys, and I would love to take them, Tyrese Halliburton.
Ian's guy.
If we could, is the Blazers. Now they're the 11th seed in the West, right? And they got Larry Nance Jr. off the bench. I would love Larry Nance Jr. 6'7" power forward. He's fast. He gets a lot of steals. He's good in the passing lanes. Another guy I would love from the Blazers, Powell. He kind of killed us when we played against him on the Raptors, but we are like a 3-point team in the league. He's a sharpshooter. I think he would be great off of the bench for us and kind of be like what we thought Evan Fournier could press. We do need a point guard though, and right now I'm kind of thinking about Malcolm offense.
I think there's a couple. Real quick, Justin, I'll send it over to you. But I think there's a couple directions the Celtics could go. I've said it. If you listen into the post game show, if you don't, start listening. It's a great show. Mostly every Celtics game we go on. Have a post game show. It's me, Ian, Justin, and our good friend Seamus, aka Celtics Every Day. But if you do watch that, something I have been saying is that there's it's a waiting game right now. I don't think Brad's going to make a move until the end of January because for the first time kind of in about a month and a half since mid-November, there's been an opportunity to kind of really actually jump up and win some games here. So there's two directions. I think if you end January off and we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more games. Say you come out, you go 6-2 in those 8 games. You're sitting 4 games above 500, maybe at the 8, 9 seed, 7 seed, somewhere in there. If you're Brad Stevens, I think your approach is a little bit different. You went the month, you go the month with only 5 losses. You think, okay, let's not necessarily sell. Let's maybe just kind of reload and get some different guys on maybe 2-year deals that we can move in the offseason, movable contracts, stuff like that. Players I personally would love to see. Jeff Green. I'd love to see Green. I love the what is this? Norman Powell. Is that him? Norman Powell on Portland. I like that. But guy, and listen, Seamus is gonna kill me for saying this because he absolutely is against it. But the guy that I think the Celtics need to move on and go attack right now.
Oh, don't say De'Aaron Fox.
De'Aaron Fox.
Oh,
I
you
knew it. I knew it.
Fox.
Mm.
And
He
here's
loves
why.
De'Aaron Fox.
De'Aaron Fox is, in my opinion, one of the best third scoring options you'll find in the end. Third, if De'Aaron Fox is your third scoring option, your team is going to be very, very good. He runs the floor extremely well. One of the fastest guards in the league. He's a phenomenal playmaker. Average right around over 7.5 assists last season on a Sacramento Kings team. Right. Fast forward to this year, kind of having a down year, but so is everyone on Sacramento. Where you don't really have a steady system over there. It's kind of, I want to say Luke Walton got fired this year. So it's been really shaky over in Sacramento. So I think you throw a couple first round picks at them, you line up the contract, use some trade exceptions, maybe ship listen, you call me crazy. If it takes Marcus Smart, they can have Marcus Smart. If it takes Nesmith, I'm giving up anyone that's not Williams, Brown, or Tatum. As long as
What?
De'Aaron Fox?
Give who up? Who are you gonna give up?
Everyone not named Brown, Tatum, or Robert Williams.
And Aaron Nesmith.
No, I'd give up Aaron Nesmith. I'd give up Aaron.
I'm a big Aaron Nesmith guy. If you don't know,
I think, but I'm telling you, I know I'm gonna get a text from Seamus if he listens to this, which I hope he does, and he's gonna say I'm crazy, but I think De'Aaron Fox fixes the Celtics point guard problem. Then all Stevens has to do is just get a couple shooters, and I think the team's heading in a good position.
Yeah, I've thought about De'Aaron Fox for a while now, and I've kind of moved off of that idea because, when you watch the Kings play, he does a lot of ISO. You know what I mean? A lot of step back mid ranges.
He fits in perfect.
Yeah, I don't think that he would be great for our system. While he's a good passer, he also shoots 23% from three, and
you're not a good shooter.
Is Dennis Schroeder. Issue. That's why we want to trade him. I feel like De'Aaron Fox is kind of just like Dennis Schroeder, but a lot better.
Yeah.
He's making a hefty contract, but I think you look at his situation, you see the ISO play. It's like, all right, well, who else does he really is he using? I mean, yeah, Buddy Hield's great. Harrison Barnes is a solid piece, but
Well, if we say we make a trade for him, that pretty much rules out any potential of getting Bradley Beal in.
Well, I'd prefer. Right? You could call me crazy, but I'd prefer to have Fox over Beal due to the age. I mean, you look at Fox; he's 24, 25 years old. He's a guy. He averaged 26 or 25.5 points per game last year. I mean, I think that his shooting's a problem. You got to look at that and kind of be like, that's shaky, but also you look at the Celtics, and they won under Rondo in his second year in the league with a bad shoot. He wasn't a great shooter.
What about we look at this and say, okay, De'Aaron Fox isn't a great shooter, but have we ever thought about signing guys around De'Aaron Fox to make up for that shooting? I mean, just in general, I think this kind of goes a little bit of off topic, but since we're talking about trade moves or free agent moves or whatever, I like to see the Celtics. With all due respect, I love Enes Freedom. Rob and I actually talked about it yesterday on the phone. We really like Enes Freedom. He's a great rebounder. He's a great mental. He helps.
Great locker room presence.
Great locker room presence. Yeah. But skill wise, he's not the best. We know he's not the best defensively. Somebody I'd like to go. Willie Cauley-Stein was just waived. I'd love to go after Willie Cauley-Stein off the bench. I really do like Freedom as a locker room guy. He's a great rebounder, but I think Cauley-Stein, I believe he's younger. I believe he's bigger. He's 26. And I'd really like to see the Celtics go after that. I know this has nothing to do with it, but I actually made that exact move on 2K. I try to rebuild the Celtics, and it's funny that this became a thing on Twitter yesterday. Maybe trade or release Freedom and sign Willie Cauley-Stein. I traded Freedom for Willie Cauley-Stein in my 2K rebuild. So to even see that is in existence, I'd love to go after a guy like Willie Cauley-Stein off the bench. I think the Celtics need a facilitating point guard, and I really do think the Celtics need a solid big man to back up Robert Williams, because once Robert Williams goes down, if he does, knock on wood, who do we have to rely on after that? A smaller Grant Williams, who's small for a 5, and a 35-year-old Al Horford, who could be either dealt at the deadline or dealt by the offseason. You know what I mean? And I think that's really important too. Obviously, we need a facilitating point guard more than another center, but I think you got to look at that as well.
So that's actually a good point. Al Horford.
For my trade deadline, I don't know. Sorry, Rob. Were you?
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so for my trade deadline for the Celtics, I kind of want to see us just like have a fire sale. So I'm not saying we tank, but I want us to just trade as many people as we can. Like Dennis Schroeder, he's probably gonna go anyway, but he's got to go. Al Horford, as much as I love Al Horford, I don't know who's gonna take his contract. Maybe a team like the Magic or the Kings, maybe, but I feel like he's got to go. You know, maybe you package Ennis Freedom, you package maybe one of Langford or Neesmith. Probably not Neesmith, but probably Langford.
Thank you.
Juancho Hernan-Gomez, he's got to go. I mean, there's so many players on this team that I feel like we just have to kind of just cut our losses and just, you know, send somewhere else. But you know, for people that I'd like, I mean, I know you guys, I mean, I've told you guys a million times, I love Tyrese Halliburton. I don't know if the Kings are going to trade him because he's so young and he has a lot of potential, but I love Tyrese on this team.
Shooting guard.
Or shooting guard, yeah. For off-season moves, we could potentially get a guy like TJ McConnell or, you know, Ricky Rubio, or just like someone that's basically known for just passing. I know Rubio towards ACL, but we need someone who is just like, you know, he's just focused on passing. And who knows, maybe even.
Want to see Rob get going? A guy like Gordon Hayward, maybe?
Oh, don't even get me started. One of the worst. I mean, I've been saying it. That was and at the time when people said they wanted to trade Gordon Hayward and get rid of Gordon Hayward, I was like,
a headache.
I was like, people don't realize what this guy is actually like. In the fourth quarter down the stretch when the other team's going on a run, Hayward was the guy setting up the offense and making sure that like it was a fluid and like the scheme was happening. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Bring him back. We let this guy go for Fournier.
If we had Gordon Hayward on this current Celtics team, I think we would be making a run for the NBA Finals this season. 100%. I think that Hayward elevates players around him game. I don't think his stats, I mean, 17, 4, and 5, I want to say.
Yeah.
That doesn't really speak, I think, to the impact he has on the court. The man in Boston was 17, 7, and 5. He scored 17-plus points with the lowest usage rate in NBA history.
People gave up on him so quick.
We should have paid him the money. I'm sorry. I would have paid him a 4-year, 120 again. I would have. I mean, the fact that we were paying Kemba Walker a 4-year, 145. I mean, it's just it kind of hit a reset button for the Celtics. What it did was it kind of flipped it. It made us out of contention. It's really what it did. It said, like, listen, okay, here's your third star. That's your third. In every NBA team, you need 3 guys that can kind of be all-star caliber. That was our third guy. We let him walk, and then it hit the reset button. We kind of, and here we are 2 years later, and I mean, I said, Justin, I think I said this on our first podcast together. We had the exact same conversation that Hayward's now walking his way to the bank, laughing, sitting ahead of the Boston Celtics in the standings.
I absolutely loved Gordon Hayward and what he did. I don't think people gave Hayward enough credit. And I, to this day, as you know, I'm a jersey collector, collect Gordon Hayward Celtic jerseys. Yeah. I think Gordon Hayward is exactly what is uplifting the Charlotte Hornets right now. Obviously, LaMelo Ball, Terry Rozier playing out of their minds right now. They got great young guys. Miles Bridges, Book Knight over there. But again, Gordon Hayward, like Rob said, elevates the people around them so much. I think the Celtics are so quick, and Celtic fans were so quick to give up on him. And it was just so awful. I thought he played very well in the bubble when we had him. He left for a couple weeks, came back in the playoffs, was a little bit shaky. I think he sprained his ankle, something like that. But look, Gordon Hayward, nonetheless, was one of the biggest losses in recent Celtic history.
For free.
I don't understand. We got an Evan Fournier who shot 0 for 10 in his freaking Celtics debut, left the Celtics, now onto one of the Celtics' biggest rivalries, and drops 40 on us every damn game, and he's the only time he plays good. And Gordon Hayward is laughing his ass off in Charlotte, getting bank. He's finally got a son, and he's playing good in Charlotte. I mean, Daddy is happy, and we're not. I mean, this is outrageous that the Celtics let Gordon Hayward walk for essentially an over player who's balding, and he's balling out for the Knicks only against the Celtics.
Well, I mean, I think
JJ, what's your opinion? What's your opinion on Gordon Hayward?
Dude, I was so mad when he left, and I'm still a big fan of him, but I'm getting him back. I don't think that's a possibility, but I would love to have him on the current roster.
Yeah.
More than Al Horford, for sure.
I also do think, though, if you look at that 2018 team, if you look, in my opinion, you look at some of the most important guys on that roster. Some names that come to mind: Gordon Hayward, Terry Rozier, Marcus Morris. I think those are three guys that brought so much to the table that we underappreciated. And guess what?
Made Marcus Morris available.
Yeah, I mean, the Clippers are a team you could flip Schroeder for. I think you could send Schroeder or maybe Horford or Cantor or someone. I think you could send over to the Clippers in return for Morris. I don't know what their asking price is, but that's a guy I'd love to have.
Definitely. I loved Marcus Morris when we had him. He was one of my favorite players because the best part about Marcus Morris was anytime he shot it, you knew it was going in just because, and like the way he shot it was so cool to where like anytime it would go in, it wouldn't hit anything. It would literally just go straight through the rim.
He's averaging
I know.
He was the most entertaining player I ever watched. I loved Marcus Morris
this year for the Clippers.
And he had such a dog mentality, right?
Yeah.
Like he didn't let anything get to him. Remember when he screamed in Tristan Thompson's face during the Eastern Conference? I mean, this guy was a total dog. I think he's definitely one of the things the Celtics need. Whether even if he comes off the bench or honestly, if you have to shift, if you have to shift Tatum to the small forward, Brown to the shooting guard, and throw in Marcus Morris at the power forward over potential Al Horford or Grant Williams, who might go in a deal like that, then I'm living with that all day long.
Well, I think that's something I think we got to move past is I don't think these young guys, Langford and Neesmith and Pritchard, are the answers. I think Pritchard's a great young talent. I think he's a great scorer. I think you could definitely you send him to a different team and you're going to have a great NBA career. And I think Neesmith has a lot of potential. Langford, a great two-way player. But, if you look at some of the younger guys back on those successful teams, obviously the star power is a little bit heavier. We had right around 4 all-star caliber players on those teams, opposed to our 2 now. But if you look at those younger guys, they're really hungry, like Rozier and Tatum and Brown. And I think the mentality was a little bit different. Then you had guys like Baines and Morris and Horford and Smart, who were just kind of like the gritty dogs on the team. They went out there and they didn't necessarily put up 20 points per game, but they were putting up 20-point-per-game impacts. That is just hard to find. And then fast forward to this year, you kind of look, and I think guys like Pritchard and Neesmith and Langford are a little softer. I think they are good, but I don't think they have the mindset to really get out there. And I think, there's someone that you got to look at and be like, that's a guy that wants it is Grant Williams. I mean, as much as last podcast, I hated Grant Williams. Fast forward, now I'm loving Grant Williams because it almost feels like he's the only Celtic player going out consistently out of that young core that's like, let's go get this. I want this. It has a good motor.
JJ,
yeah, sure.
I know you had a lot of opinions on Grant Williams. What is your opinion now?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, I am sorry for everything I've ever heard about Grant Williams.
I joined the club, dude. I was right there with you.
If I could erase what I said from existence, I would. I think he's a great player, and I think that he gets minutes.
Yeah,
and he's deserving of the minutes.
Well, I hate to be I doubt Grant will listen to this. If you are, Grant, I'm sorry if you think I'm rude, but you kind of sucked last year. So I feel like everything I was saying, everything you were saying was deserved because and listen, I think you listened and I think you got better. But dude, you were bad. You really you not anymore though. And mind you, you're NBA. so 1v1 last year, you could still great basketball player. But you did not have, you had a sophomore slump, and it happens, but like, it was rough for the Grant Williams, especially because his bubble was so impressive. He was really hanging out there in
Bubble
the
Grant was
playoffs.
different.
But you had a sophomore slump. But to be fair, kind of everyone had a slump other than Brown and Tatum that year. So he responded very well, and he's a guy I'd love to keep around. Like, keep Grant, fits well, great defender, great shooter. I'd love to have Grant for the foreseeable future.
I believed you all along, Grant. So I thought
I know. I was on the train.
I was definitely, there were moments
Grant.
where I was frustrated at Grant Williams, but like I definitely wasn't like totally like you said, Rob, like everybody had a slump last year except for Brown and Tatum. So I think overall it was very, very frustrating. But the way that Grant, we kind of sat here, right? And Grant Williams was invited to Summer League, and we kind of sat here and was like, okay, no offense, Grant, but you were the guy that, out of all the guys that needed it, even Peyton and Aaron, you were the one that should have gone. And he didn't go. He says, look, I'm going on a diet, trying to get my weight down, trying to improve my shooting. And look at this. He's backing up everything, every single maybe excuse or reason that he gave not to go into Summer League. He's backing it up 100% this season on both ends of the basketball floor. And I'm really impressed with Grant Williams. Rob and I kind of talked about, is he in the run for a, potential most improved player of the year? Probably not. Definitely on the Celtics. But I mean, if he moves into that starting role, gets more minutes, it all depends on injuries or trades or anything. I mean, we could see that happen, but definitely, in my opinion, definitely the most improved player on the Celtics so far this season.
Yeah, definitely. And shout out to Grant. Grant. Yes, sir. But I was at the Braintree Mall. I met Grant Williams. It was pretty sick. So shout out to Grant for having a great season.
So, I feel like we got a good grasp of who we think the Celtics should bring in at the deadline, and what they should do in the offseason. But I don't think there's one move this deadline that will happen that's really going to fix all their problems, right? So what needs to happen for for a game plan style, right? For a style of play for the remainder of the season? Because you do see that there's an opportunity here. Celtics 4-game homestand, 3 of 4 extremely winnable games, kind of a chance to go. I mean, we won the first one. We beat the tough game. We got the hard part out of the way. We won against Chicago. 3 games here, very all winnable. Chance to kind of get out of that dreaded under 500 death hole. So what needs to happen here? So what do we need to do? The Boston Celtics need to do for the remainder of the year, for the next how many games? 38 games of the season, to maybe make a push.
Yeah, I would say is we need to stay disciplined, right? Because like Ian was saying earlier, there's just lapses in the game sometimes where, the Celtics aren't focused on a common goal, exactly what he said. And not only is there like lapses in a game, there's also like full games where we show no energy, like the Sixers game, right? We had a 3-game winning streak, then Jaylen Brown went out and said, we're not satisfied. And then the next game we play against our rivals, we like lose by what it was 12, but we were losing by 20 like the entire fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the to improve on most is our discipline and being able to come out with energy every single game. Yeah, instead of just some games.
Yeah, I agree. I think that our fourth quarters, I think you got to look at our fourth quarters and you got to kind of say, what can we do we play a phenomenal 3 quarters. There's just always one 12-minute period. It's usually not even the full quarter. It's usually just like half of it where it just shit hits the fan and it goes horribly wrong. I think they need to figure out I think that goes back to discipline. Yeah, I think you nailed it. I mean, even look at the Sixers game. The first quarter, we lose 32-14. And we win the last 3 quarters by 8. Like, we won if we kept it close in the first quarter, we win that game. And we've seen it all the time. We've seen it against the Spurs at home, seen it against the Bulls at home. We've seen it against, we're out to Milwaukee on the road on Christmas. Was it Christmas Day? Yeah. So like we've seen this. It's really starting against the Knicks. It's just, can the Celtics just stay disciplined and put up a good 48 minutes, because they're in almost every single. It's not like they play in. That Sixer game was kind of a rare sighting, because you don't play in a lot of games where we just get blown out the whole time. It's kind of like we're hanging in there. We either have a lead or we're going back and forth, and the last 6 minutes of the fourth quarter hits, and it's abysmal.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's really important for the Celtics. I think it's just important for them to stay focused, like you guys were saying. But I don't know. I feel like we need to see what all the young guys can do, in my opinion. So I want to see guys. Sorry, I want to see guys like Pritchard, Neesmith, Langford. I want to see them getting even more minutes than they are now. You know, if you're the Celtics, I'm not sure that you say, you you know, if you're the Celtics, I'm not sure if you say, "Oh, we're gonna really make a playoff run this year." So, I want to see all the young guys play. I want to see what they can do. So that's the big thing I want to look for. I want to see what Pritchard, Neesmith, Langford, even Grant. I want to see what these guys can do.
Yeah, I agree completely about Pritchard and Naismith. I do enough at all. I think that it's their second season and we're the 11 seed, and yet you still see games where they both get DNPs. While when they do play, there's always it's always fun to watch them, and they're very talented players. They're Aaron Naismith, two-way sharpshooter, and then Pritchard is just insane. There's no way he's not getting minutes on an NBA roster. I get disappointed that.
Yeah, and Pritchard lit up the Garden last night when he hit two back-to-back threes, and the Garden was going crazy. Those are the guys that I want to see play because the Garden can rally around those kind of guys.
For sure. And going back to that Philly game, guys, did the Celtics not make a late run with Peyton Pritchard in the game? I mean, Peyton Pritchard really kept I guess the Celtics were technically out of the game, but he really helped bring the Celtics, back into the game. Celtics cut it down to single digits with around a minute left. Peyton Pritchard, I think he had 17 that game. And it makes you wonder, he had games against the...
That was creepy.
What the hell?
That was
weird. he had games against the Portland Trailblazers that we saw where he absolutely lit up the Trailblazers. Like JJ said, there's no reason why they have so many DMPs for the type of play that they bring on a night-to-night basis. And this whole thing goes back, and I know I've said this, but I sound like a broken record, but you're paying Juancho Hernangomez. I have nothing against the player, personally, but he hasn't shown us anything in the time he's played. First of all, you're paying him $7 million, and he doesn't even play in blowouts. I mean, I was telling Rob the other night, he didn't play in that Philly game, not 1 minute. He didn't, where we essentially, like JJ said, we're down by 20 the whole game, other than the fourth quarter. And then he didn't play in that Indiana game where we blew them out by 20. He didn't play in either of those two games. And that, to me, if you're paying a guy nearly $10 million at the end of your bench, that's not right. And I think Juancho Hernangomez is just as out of the door as Dennis Schroeder is, in my opinion. You can't be paying a guy that much money to sit on the end of your bench.
Yeah. What are we paying? Honcho was a guy I kind of thought at the beginning of the year where he might see some consistent time because I feel like he did a solid job in Minnesota prior to actually being a solid role player. I don't think hasn't always been a bench warmer who doesn't see the court.
And he played really, I know it's a preseason, but he did play really, really well in the preseason. And even JJ, we went to those preseason games. We were all there. And Juancho Hernangomez started in both the games we went to. And I thought he played pretty well. And obviously,
Didn't
I know
he get game-winning free throws, or was that someone else?
I don't know. I remember Langford hit a game-winning three, though. But I just don't understand why we're paying a guy nearly $10 million to DNP, coach's decision, every night, whether it's a close game or a blowout. And like you said, Rob, there are games where Juancho Hernangomez played for Minnesota and Denver that he had really good games. It's not like he sat at the end of the bench and he didn't get in games. I mean, he was playing some consistent minutes, and he can shoot the basketball really well. But I'd rather give somebody else in the league that type of contract to you know what I mean? There's better players out there to give that sort of contract to.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, $7's not a cheap deal. You're paying $7 million. That guy should be a good role player on your team. So I think Juancho.
He's making more than Schroeder. Let's just say that. Put that into perspective.
Kind of crazy.
I think Juancho, Schroeder, and Cantor for sure are three guys that need to get moved before the deadline. I do think Horford's a guy you have to look at and say, is this guy realistically going to benefit us down the road for $12 million, for $20, whatever he's making? If the answer is no, I do think he's an easy move in the offseason. Like, it doesn't really hurt to just eat, like, you know what, you're eating his contract this year anyway. So, like, moving him at the deadline doesn't really clear cap space because it drops down to $12 million next year. So you could wait for that, a little bit easier move. But yeah, I mean, I think if you look at this team, it's funny because I do think if you asked the Celtics fans, 3.5, 4 months ago, they would say we have a great constructed roster. Fast forward, and I think they would say the complete opposite, honestly.
I think we completely underrated the fact that we had no shooting on this team.
Yeah.
Like, even like in hindsight, like we didn't think Al Horford was going to be like this great shooter.
We knew it was
right?
going to be bad. We didn't know it was going to be this bad.
Yeah, but do you know
True.
what though? Like the amount of we had 0 defense last year. I think we were just so thunderstruck about how much defense we actually had on this roster. Yeah. And in the beginning of the season, our identity was defensive minded. I mean, we were holding teams to 70, 75, 80, 90 points. And, I think that was a big thing. And I think definitely the offense has somewhat improved. I think like JJ said earlier, our 3-point shooting is one of the worst in the league. We're definitely in the bottom half of the league, if not the bottom 5 of the league. Yeah. And I think the Celtics moves, they're going to involve a shooter in their lineup as well. I mean, I don't know who you go after in free agency. I mean, JJ Redick, I know he's retired, but a couple off seasons ago, he was in the talks. I mean, I hated other than shooting, he presented you nothing. Yeah. He was the worst probably defensive player you can ever have on a roster. But when you're this desperate of getting shooting, if you could stick a guy like JJ Redick on the bench, that helps you out a lot. And I'm sure that there's players out there like a JJ Redick. I'm still baffled that the Celtics haven't offered Isaiah Thomas a 10-day contract. I get Isaiah Thomas isn't going to win you a championship, but when you're this bad in the hole and you're in desperate need of scoring, why not sign a guy? I mean, we released Jabari Parker, so we have a roster spot open. Why not at least give Isaiah Thomas a 10-day contract just to try him out? And even if we don't re-sign him, guess what? We tried. That's all we can ask for. I don't mean to get into this whole Isaiah Thomas should be a Celtic or not. I'm really not trying to get into that. But there's no reason we can't sign a 10-day guy like an Isaiah Thomas and just give it a try. And worst comes to worst, if it doesn't work out, you don't guarantee him another 10-day contract. You let him walk.
Well, you know what's funny? I think that if you look at what the Celtics need, a situation that they're actually in where I compare it to is like the 2017-18 Milwaukee Bucks, where their core group is like a solid, right? Mind you, the East is weaker, so I think if we're playing over there, honestly, if we were in the West, we would be a 7 seed, just like Milwaukee was a 7 seed in 17-18. So I think that we're kind of in this awkward stage where you have the two young stars, you have some decent pieces, enough to kind of make it to the playoffs, right? But not really enough to make a real run. So I think that, if you look at Milwaukee, they kind of progressed every year. They've kind of figured out the pieces, that fit around Giannis. They finally made that big jump when they kind of brought in Brook Lopez to space the floor and play 5 out and get their third piece in Drew Holiday that brought it all together. I think the Celtics just need to find their Drew Holiday. I think you look at guys.
Drew Holiday was our Drew Holiday.
Yeah, I know.
I wish we got Drew Holiday so bad.
I think another guy you should look at is DeJounte Murray in San Antonio.
Oh my God! Don't get JJ started.
Oh my God!
I think that if San Antonio is willing to move him, that's a guy that great defense. I mean, he's kind of a carbon copy of Drew Holiday, 19, 8, and 9. Are you kidding me? I mean, I think DeJounte, actually, now thinking about it, should be a guy to go get.
All right, let JJ take this one.
Yeah.
I would love DeJounte. I mean, like, I'm a Celtics fan, but I'm also a Spurs fan, and I love watching him. And if we were to, I don't really care who we throw at him. Just throw everything that we can besides Tatum, Brown, and Robert Williams. Or even if we have to give Robert Williams. They don't want Robert Williams because they have Jakob Poeltl, but I would love Dante. He'd be the perfect guy for our team. I don't even know what to say more than that. It would just be perfect.
Yeah, well, he tortures us every damn time we play him. So, I mean, I would. Yeah, honestly, the more I think about it is if you look at what we're in, and you look at similar around the league that two young stars like the Bucks did, 4 ago. He really is a carbon copy of Drew Holiday. Great defense, phenomenal mid-range shooter, can knock down the three ball, not at a high clip. But 33% is not good, not the worst though. He can knock him down. He shoots 42% from the field on 77 or 76% from the line. Not the best, not the worst. Great defense. I mean, I would love DeJounte Murray on this team. That's a guy the Celtics need to go out and get, I think.
I've seen mock trades with actually DeJounte and like Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson for Jalen.
You cut out there for a second, JJ.
Oh, sorry, I did. Wait, where'd Jessica?
I just took him off the screen for a second.
Okay.
Yeah, so you said mock trade was like Vassell.
Yeah, I saw a mock trade
Murray.
with, like centered around Jalen Brown and DeJounte Murray.
I don't know about that one, but
yeah, no.
I don't think DeJounte Murray is that good yet. I think he has the potential to be as good as around a guy like Jaylen Brown is, but I don't think he's up there right now.
I think the only way I'd move Brown, and even still I'd think about it, is if a superstar, if like the Clippers were to call us up and be like, here's Kawhi Leonard, right? And I think that's when you start thinking about it. Is 3 years of Kawhi and maybe 2 title runs worth it for giving up Brown? Is that a sacrifice you're willing to make? But even still, I think Brown's ceiling is just so incredibly high that moving him for anything less than a MVP caliber player is just not the best idea, because I think Brown's ceiling, I think, is top 15 in the NBA. I think he can hit that peak in 3-4 years, and I just don't think it's worth moving him for like Damian Lillard. I wouldn't touch Damian Lillard for Jaylen Brown. I wouldn't touch Bradley Beal for Brown. I wouldn't touch Fox for Brown. I mean, if you're not getting a young star back in return, I'm not moving him. Same with Tatum too, and that actually brings me to a point I want to talk about. Oh, go ahead, JJ. My fault.
James Harden was available. We could have traded like Jalen, or something for Harden. When it might have been, we would have like won a championship last.
Yeah, but I mean, James Harden ended up getting hurt in the playoffs anyway. So, and knowing the Celtics' luck with like big free agents or big trades, he probably would have gotten hurt like right before the playoffs anyway. So,
yeah. Well, something I want to bring up a topic here, because first of all I want to hear your guys' input. So, I had a conversation with my brother the other day, and a point he brought up, I've brought it up kind of on the post game a little bit briefly, but we were talking about, both big Celtics fans, obviously. Talking about, really what's going wrong with the Celtics, obviously some roster moves, you can point fingers at Udoka, but really in the NBA, the way NBA works is when a team isn't succeeding, you point the finger at the best players on that team. Just like if LeBron's losing, like I said, I just said LeBron's losing, not the Lakers. That's my point. Yeah. When the Nets aren't doing well, you blame Durant. Warriors missed the playoff. Guess what? Curry, blame's kind of on you. You got to figure it out. So something that he was saying was that you got to point the fingers at Brown and Tatum, and I think that their lack, their mentality, and their kind of presence has been all out of whack. I feel like they think due to their early success, I've already kind of figured it out. In reality, they play the role player role and not the superstar role. I think that they have this idea because they've done it when they were so young that they can do it again now, and it's not going to take any major adjustments. So a idea I want to present to you guys is, I think it would actually be much better for us if Brown and Tatum were to miss the All-Star game. Mind you, I still voted. They got my vote because I'm not going to not vote for them, but if in the event they missed it, do you think that could be a kind of a humbling, opportunity for them? Because they are, they had success early. They're great young talents, superstars in the making. However, it kind of feels like because they won when they were so young and playing this kind of role player and not a superstar, that they kind of almost feel like they have the whole thing figured out.
That's a good question, and I was kind of thinking about that, and in my opinion, honestly, I don't think Jason Tatum is an all-star, but he's gonna make it just because there's a lack of real competition,
Yeah.
like in the East, like at that position. Like there's not a lot of forwards that are having a great season in the East right now. So
Yeah.
I feel like Tatum will make it in regardless. I don't know if Brown will make it in. Brown's been
Yeah.
kind of turning it on lately, but that's an
Yeah.
interesting thought because I don't know if they take like all-star games like that seriously into consideration because I know some players don't and some players do.
Yeah.
Honestly, it might open their eyes a little bit. I could see it happening where it's like, oh, just because I'm doing good doesn't mean it warrants an all-star appearance or whatever. But it's interesting. It's an interesting topic to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
You're good,
I
JJ.
don't know. Okay, are you going?
Oh, sorry, Mike.
No, I was no
For a
worries,
second.
dude. I was waiting for you to take the show, dude.
You're good. So yeah, with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, like I think Jason Tatum's for sure gonna make the All-Star game. But in the situation where they both don't, I think that would be good for us because, like that would give them a chip on their shoulder, especially Tatum. I feel like he'd take that a little bit more personally than Jaylen Brown would. And also just the fact that if you're not an all-star, you get like 4 days off, 4 days to go like rest, which is good. That can be beneficial for two stars like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown who are like running our team every night.
Yeah, I just think that if you look at Brown and Tatum, there's two guys where I think they kind of just need to sit back for a second and think, what can we fix? I don't think they're the problem. I think they work together. I keep both of them. Don't trade them. That's not what I'm saying. I actually think that's the last thing you do, is trade Brown and Tatum. But I do think there is this concept in their brain that they've already got it figured out and they don't have to kind of switch everything up, and that when the fourth quarter comes, they can go ISO play down the stretch because, that's what they know and that's what worked back when they didn't have to do the superstar type work. But now that they are superstars, I think that not making the All-Star game is an opportunity for them to sit back and look at what they've been doing this season and saying, what else can I do to elevate my game? Obviously, I think they both are looking to elevate their game, but it's just kind of a scenario that I think you could present and think, it may benefit us. It maybe switch up the mentality in the locker room, and you never know. But with that being said, we are reaching our time here. A nice long episode, guys. Finally felt good to get back. Like we said, Celtics tomorrow, or today, actually, when you're listening to it, face off against the Pelicans, 12:30. Honestly, might be done. Podcast will be going out right around 12, so 30 minutes prior to game time. Turn it on right before, listen to it before you watch the game. We do post-game shows on our YouTube channel. Ian streams the games on TikTok. It's a lot of fun. You go in, chat about that. Justin does play-by-play. JJ, go follow him on TikTok if you already not. You probably already are. He's got a big following over there. JJ, thank you so much for coming on, guys. Before we officially close out the show, some last thoughts, last remarks. Celtics, what do they got to do right here before we close out?
Got to go 3-0.
Thank you for having me. And
Of course.
some closing thoughts would just be to play good. And well, obviously, but
Definitely.
There's no
Definitely.
reason why the Celtics shouldn't go 3-0 in the final 3 games of this homestand. I'm serious. No Zion Williamson for the Pelicans, no Damian Lillard for the Portland Trailblazers, and then we face a Charlotte Hornets team that, yes, is playing some really, really good basketball, but there's no reason why the Celtics can't go 3-0 this week, and there's no reason why we can't come out next Sunday on the podcast and explain yet another great week for the Celtics, just like they had last week. I absolutely zero excuses as to why. They're fully healthy. Besides Marcus Smart, 1 through 15, the Celtics are healthy. So got to go out there and go 3-0. There's literally no. If you could split it the way we did this weekend with the Sixers and Bulls, win one of those 2 games, you can definitely go 3-0 against these 3 teams who are depleted right now. So go out there, go 3-0. No excuses on your home court.
Yeah,
Definitely. Sure. Have to go 3-0. Have to.
The 7 seed.
Got to get up to. Got to get over 500 for Christ's sakes.
Yes, we have to get over 500 for the first time since June.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I don't
Since
even
the
know when was the
preseason.
last since preseason. When was the last time the Celtics were like over 500?
Yeah.
But,
I know.
like,
Well, they got a good shot at it. Like you said, 3 very winnable games. You know, a chance to go back up, get out of that death hole. But we will have you guys back here on whatever YouTube, Spotify, wherever you listen to this one next Sunday. Hopefully, we can talk about some winning Celtics basketball instead of what they got to do to get better. But like I said, again, JJ, thank you for coming on, guys. It felt Ian, Justin, feels great to be back in here. Get going. We will see you guys next week. Until then, go Celtics.